Whatever.
Okay, well, good afternoon. Here today to welcome the governor to Fresno, California. I'm first going to acknowledge Councilmember Esmeralda Sawyer, who's on the state task force for homelessness, correct? Okay, she'll speak later. About a year ago, I met with the governor and the mayors of Merced and Bakersfield in my conference room. And he made a promise and the valley behind. And on a number of issues, he has fulfilled his promise, including homelessness, the #1 issue in Fresno and the #1 issue across the entire state. Our first round of HEAP funding, we got about $3 million. We have 241 beds already filled. It's a great need for even more. I want to thank Governor Newsom for our next allocation will be $11 million that will be sorely needed. And also the investment in mental health services that are a critical part of homeless services. So again, thank you, Governor Newsom, and welcome to Fresno.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. I am also just proud to be here to welcome the governor, to come see him here, continue to come to the city of Fresno and to the valley, where we see that he is serious about addressing the number of issues, and one of them, which we know is on the top of people's list, is homelessness. I also want to thank his staff for inviting us. I do want to say Dewan for the remarkable work that she is doing here to address the behavioral health issues that continue to impact every individual in our community, from young to old. I also just want to say that I'm incredibly proud to have been selected to serve as a council member to represent the Central Valley when it comes to homelessness issue. We were just able to present the interim report to the governor, where we had an opportunity to have a discussion about next steps and the recommendations that were made. I know that there's a lot of work to be done, but we all said that we were ready to continue to roll up our sleeves even further up to continue to make the enormous strides. And thank you, Governor, for the tremendous investments that you've made, not only on homelessness, but in the city of Fresno. As you guys had heard, he made an announcement that $50 million are coming here to address economic development. So thank you for the time and for your commitment to the valley and to the people of this region.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you, both of you, for your leadership, and thank you for your guidance, for your faith, not only in our relationship, but this partnership that's forming, both on economic development, workforce development, and now subsequently trying to address the issue that defines our moral moment, and that's the issue of homelessness. It's been quite remarkable. I've had the privilege of the last 7-8 years traveling all throughout the state of California. I've seen best practices. I've seen next practices, programs that are novel, that are reimagining the way things are done. I've seen things that inspire. I see things that enliven my anxiety, not just my optimism, that sort of reinforce the status quo and give me pause. But nothing is more raw than experiences like this, where you spend time with people that are struggling inside, people that are challenged with behavioral health issues, people that are struggling with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, paranoia, deep and serious depression, many that are self-medicating with drug or alcohol addictions. And in particular, when you see that in young people, our youth, it sort of focuses the mind in this respect to resolve to do more and do better for them and for the communities, their families, the communities more broadly of which they live. And so I'm very grateful to you for the work you're doing. Thank you for the privilege of that experience we just had. Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, for your leadership in this space and your commitment and resolve to demand more from the state and to expect real partnership that doesn't have an R next to it or a D next to it. I appreciate, we're sitting around with you and Bakersfield Mayor and Merced Mayor. There was not 3 Republicans in the room and 1 Democrat, just 3 folks that shared experience of mayor and a former mayor in that room that happens to be your governor, that wanted to do more and do better, and that commitment remains, and I really look forward to the next few years and what we could advance together. To you for the incredible guidance and stewardship in this task force that was put together. We had a task force that's It wasn't like a lot of task forces. You know, a lot of task forces are put together, you never hear from them. A year or two later, they come out with some stale report that may or may not meet the moment. This task force put out an op-ed within weeks of convening that started challenging people's thinking as it relates to right to shelters, and it was a provocative conversation that they were having in real time. 13 remarkable people, including former members of the Bush administration, that participated in this task force. We truly wanted a diversity of opinion and perspective, but what was most remarkable to me is they came back unanimous in their support of recommendations, focusing on what's working and really wanting to double down on the issue that brings us here today, the issue of mental health and behavioral health. It is incumbent upon us, particularly here in California, that have struggled to be part of a national narrative that's really an American narrative that is one that is vexed and frustrated federal administrations, state administrations from all across the country. And that's what we have done since the 70s to dismantle our behavioral health system in this country. California, in many ways, led that charge. It's easy to finger point, and at the end of the day, the more I do that, the more I realize I'm not doing justice to the totality of how we ended up here. But we ended up here, and it happened on our collective watch. Society becomes how we behave, and our behavior has fallen short in terms of meeting the needs of, quite literally, tens of thousands of people that are falling through the cracks, ending up out on the streets and sidewalks. And so my commitment to all of you is to rebuild that system, rebuild a culturally competent, community-based system of care that meets the unique needs of our diverse communities and our diverse regions throughout the state of California. We made a significant down payment last year on that effort, but this year we are promoting something that is a lot more. We are promoting what we call a 1915B waiver for the federal government to completely reimagine our Medi-Cal system, our behavioral health system, the way we tie payments to outcomes, the way we support physical health and brain health integration, the way we prioritize the kind of integration that often is siloed and is lacking in our current system. It's a commitment that is backed up with $695 million in our budget request this year, annualizing to $1.4 billion over the next few years, just focused on radically reinventing our healthcare and mental health care delivery system in the state of California. The reason Mark Galley is here, Health and Human Services Secretary, is he decided to take the job, what the predicate that this was his opportunity, his mandate to innovate. Comes from LA County. I understand it's a city, 88 cities, the county functions, lack of integration in some cases, lack of cooperation, collaboration, understands this from a grassroots perspective. Now, as our state leader, we have something big to do, and I think he has something remarkable to offer. So that's one component of what we are advancing and what we want to announce. The second component is just dealing with the emergency, the crisis at hand. As we advance the ideal of a housing-first policy, we believe, and it's a mantra for me, shelters solve sleep, housing and supportive services solve homelessness. As we frame a housing-first model, as we support our supportive housing development, we also have to deal with the reality that the time value of putting those units together and financing them and getting the approvals take years and years and years. What the hell are you going to do today to solve this problem? Went up 16.4% last year. 151,278 people in our point-of time account. By the way, that happened quite literally this time last year. Those new numbers are a year old. We'll see what the new numbers avail themselves or what they preview in the next few months as the point-in-time accounts for some communities are taking place in the next few weeks. Enough's enough. We got to own this. We got to meet this moment. This issue is a crisis. It's a state of emergency. People are dying on the streets and sidewalks. There's no compassion stepping over people on the streets and sidewalks. And we've got to own up to this in a way we haven't in the past. State of California, with respect is nowhere to be found on this issue. We've done good work to support our social service safety net broadly, but not with a focus, not with an intentional strategy, with a real comprehensive plan. That has now changed. We have a plan, we're executing on that plan, and we're supporting that plan not with rhetoric, not with press releases or press conferences, but with real money. You'll be the beneficiary here in Fresno City and County of $11.5 million of emergency grants that are being distributed in real time, quite literally in the next few weeks. $650 million will be distributed throughout the state of California in communities large and small. I started a few days ago in Grass Valley up in Nevada County. We were down in Riverside yesterday. I was in LA in the morning. We're here today. I'll be in Oakland tomorrow afternoon. Tens of millions of dollars being distributed, hundreds of millions throughout the state over the next few weeks. In addition to that, I'm asking the legislature to appropriate a new structure, a new fund, which will set aside $750 million of additional money. And rather than waiting through the typical appropriation cycle, we want to get the legislature to act with a deeper sense of urgency. And by the way, I don't think I have to coerce them. They get it. And I think they want to get it done. The leadership gets this issue, and I applaud their incredible attachment to solving this issue and fast track the distribution of those dollars so that it's not next January those additional $750 million go out. I'd like to see that money available in July, August of this year. So you got $650 million of emergency grants in real time with flexibility, rapid rehousing, recuperative care to support people that are in housing so that they don't end up on the streets and sidewalks that may be a paycheck away or a job loss away or an incident that puts them in the emergency room away from losing their home. We're providing those resources as well. Prevention, not just dollars on the production side or new asset side. And then we'll move this transformative mental health delivery process forward in real time and move forward this new $750 million fund. In addition to that, in closing, forgive me for my long-windedness, tense about this issue, as I imagine all of you are as well. We want to move forward with the principal recommendation that the task force and work group asked and requested, and that is a constitutional amendment in the state of California that would be placed on the November 2020 ballot, mandating that cities and counties have real plans of action to address this issue. You got to meet the moment with something more than just encouragement, but a real focus. And in that mandate is new partnerships will be formed with the state of California, and we hope ultimately with the federal government, recognizing that we have to work to support communities large and small. We can't just mandate without support. And so we want to advance that. We're working on the details. We want to be sensitive to localism, Mr. Mayor, and Madam Councilwoman. I appreciate that as a former mayor and a former county supervisor. At the same time, we have to deepen our sense of urgency. One of your members of your task force wisely said this is analogous to the RPS process on our low-carbon green growth. It's one thing to encourage changing the way we consume and produce energy. It's another to create mandates. And in that mandate creates a date that is, well, it's a dream with a deadline. That's otherwise known as a goal. And by forcing conversation anew with that mandate, I think that ultimately will significantly enhance our efforts to jurisdictionalize a different frame of relationship to this issue and resolve to solve this issue. So that's the broad strokes. There are dozens and dozens of details, but just know we get it. We need to get it done. We're not waiting around. Everybody in the state has the right to be frustrated. I'm frustrated, as you are. The difference is I have a deep sense of responsibility, and I want to meet this moment and do justice to that anxiety. So we are grateful you all took time to be here, and now, of course, available for any questions you may have.
Governor, the big concern in this town is the homeless people who live on the canal banks and go all the way through our city, who live on freeway systems, up in the trees. and then a big congregation that lives west of the downtown area. What will $11.5 million do anything to change people who really don't want any help?
So I get asked the question about people that are service resistant all the time that say, hey, we're good, we don't need that bed. I was with a young man, you were there yesterday, that was in a board and care type home in LA County, who said he was offered in LA the opportunity to get a shelter bed in another community a couple hours away for one night with a one-way ticket to the shelter but no way to get back. And he was deemed, quote unquote, service resistant, saying not interested. When in fact, what he was looking for was where he ended up, which is something that met his needs. And forgive me, I know people hear that and they say, well, what about my needs? I'm a taxpayer, I'm a middle, I'm sick and tired of you taking care of everybody else, what about me? I get that, I respect that. But I also respect the impact of our neglects having on your taxes, because people are ending up in the emergency rooms and uncompensated care, and that cost is ultimately borne by you and I as well. There's a moral and ethical construct in addition to that. But my deep, and I've spent 20 years on this, not something new, it's not something I intellectualized. It's the reason I became a county supervisor. It's the reason I became mayor of San Francisco. We got 12,000 people off the street. We reduced our street population at peak by 33%. At the time, this was a decade ago, is that I worked past that belief and realized it's a mythology. While there's always an exception, the vast majority of people are like you and me. When they're ready, you meet them where they are, of course they would prefer the dignity of a key lock and a door in a house, a place to call home. People don't love being out in the elements with raccoons knocking on the tents every night and people trying to knock them over to try to get a buck or two to feed an addiction. No one prefers that. For people to think that, that's a mindset of, it's a mindset that gives up. I'm not going to give up. I'm optimistic about this. So you just got to meet people where they are. You got to keep at them. It could take 5, 10, 15 times, but eventually you'll get that person, and we'll get to work solving this. But and by the way, on closing on that, and forgive me, I try to be much quicker with the answers. Don't ever think you can't solve this problem. I don't think you could solve it. I know it. I mean, we were with Peggy yesterday. We're solving problems. We were with all those young folks. I mean, everywhere I go, we're solving this problem. So there's so much evidence to the contrary. So I just really want folks to know they should be optimistic because it's a new day. They should be optimistic because we are capable of so much more than we think we are. This is not a permanent state of affairs. This is the richest state that God has ever conceived. It's running historic surpluses. We're running historic reserves. We're running historic economic output. We're running historic net job growth. We're the most resourceful state in the world, the most innovative and creative state on planet Earth. More patents, more researchers, more scientists, more Nobel laureates in this state. My gosh, don't tell me we can't solve this. It's absolutely solvable.
Governor, what kind of metrics are you going to use to know that the $11 million you just spent in Fresno is working?
Well, what we want to do is, what I hope, part of this compliment, we're doing 2 new things. We're doing these 100-day plans and 100-day challenges. It's one way of sharpening the edges, sharpening people's focus. We've got dozens and dozens of cities that have taken up on this challenge, as well as counties, saying in 100 days, 100 people off the streets. And we're trying to reward good behavior. And we're trying to bonus those behaviors. It could be 100 whatever, you fill in the blank. It's designed with the kind of flexibility in mind that local leaders, I think, deserve and I think demand as well. And so that's one area to truly measure success in numerical and /human terms. The broader numerics are part of this new fund we want to create. The $750 million fund is to start regionalizing supports, and in them, in and around them, there will be contracted obligations to actually put their goals out in transparent ways and meet and measure those goals and finance those goals. That's something we've never done on a regional basis in the state's history, and that's a big part of the planning metrics that we're looking forward to advancing this next year.
Governor, you call this a state of emergency and a housing crisis, but why are we not asking the federal government for any help?
Well, we're asking them for help. I've written 2 letters to the administration, very detailed terms, asking for support in this respect. the most important thing the federal administration can do is to support the fair market rent delta in the state of California versus the value of the federal vouchers. There are two sets of vouchers: secured choice, old Section 8 housing vouchers, and then VASH vouchers for veterans. The problem, we have a lot of unused vouchers in the state of California because the fair market rents are so high here, cost of living so high, Lord will allow the utilization of that voucher. So we're providing in this emergency funds, the $11.5 million, for example, can be used partially to offset. But there's a concern around the annualization of that, which as a mayor, you would like to see that a permanent annuity. And so it's more difficult for the local government support, but the federal government certainly could. And so we've exchanged correspondence. We'll see what happens. President says that often. I'll say it and repeat it. We'll see what happens. But the hand is out, not the fist, hoping for support, inviting that contribution.
Governor, I was out talking to just some people on the streets today. You know, there were some by the Paparello house who they said that they just go in there for a meal, come out, and they don't want to go to these treatment centers because there's restrictions. They don't want to get clean. They would rather sit there, go in, get a meal, come out, and keep on living their daily life.
Yep.
And so with these new centers, how is that going to help if they don't want to change?
Well, it sounds like we're not providing the kind of opportunities of access and choice that a lot of these folks apparently need. Look, there are a lot of rules and regulations. You've got pet restrictions, you've got partner restrictions, you've got security restrictions, you have some places that have to be clean and sober. I love that. The clean and sober is one of the biggest damn mistakes this country's ever made. I know it's a hold your hand idealistic point of view that somehow magically, I mean, God bless some of you. If you're like me, I've been known to have a glass of wine at night watching some of the nightly news. We all need to self-medicate periodically. Others will find out, you know, maybe the stroll around the block is more indulgent way of doing that, or more enlightened way. But you living out in the streets and sidewalks, you may just find that you're struggling with a little, you know, that little too much to drink or doing something else. And then you want to come in, they're like, sorry, you got to be clean and sober. Well, you're living out under the overpass. It's hard to moralize that. My point is, we got to provide more options, more choices. You provide more choices, you find out it's a pet issue. That's the real issue. You find out that they have paranoia and the facility itself is not designed in a way that meets their behavioral health needs. Or the staff, they may have had a personal relationship an issue. You have to address all those issues. And so that's providing a menu of services. And, you know, we have to work around that. That's not an excuse. And I just, I feel like those folks, we'll get them eventually.
So will your camp trailers be different, and like what are the restrictions on those?
Well, we're going to be putting out, and thank you for reminding me of that. I should have notes. Tomorrow, we'll be previewing the first FEMA trailers. We purchased FEMA trailers. We have over 100. Well, we have a huge portfolio, but we have 100 that we're making available. We have dozens of them that are currently being used in the Camp Fire in terms of the recovery up there related to the Butte fire. They'll be made available in the next few months. We've got 58 that are available in the next few weeks, and I think we have a dozen or so that we'll be making available tomorrow. Those trailers accommodate the many different configurations, accommodate a number of people, and some of them smaller units exist. We also are combining that with what we call these cow mats, which are these medical tents that were purchased during the Schwarzenegger administration. They're in 6 office emergency service districts throughout the state of California. We'll be deploying those to complement those efforts. And then we are going to use that as a catalyst to coordinate all the other programming, scattered sites, provide more services. We're bringing strike teams from the state, Caltrans folks, HSS, Health and Human Service folks, make sure everybody is getting their appropriate support, meet SSI, advocacy, and support, getting their SNAP benefits, their food stamp benefits, making sure they're eligible, but some may be eligible for CalWorks, maybe eligible for an earned income tax credit, bringing all that to bear in order to leverage resources. And so that's just another tool in the short term. The money that they'll have will provide in the medium term other tools that will be in their best interest. The mayor will lead those efforts with the council. And then the state will come in next year with this regional fund and to start to stretch the jurisdictional responsibility beyond just one city in one county.
Mayor, where in the city would you like to see these services that the governor described built?
Well, they're going to be on an equitable basis, not going to be in one area of town. Let me also address the previous question about the services. A big component of this is mental health, and I think we need to up our investment in both inpatient and outpatient services. 'Cause a lot of the people you're talking about that prefer to stay on the street are basically schizophrenics, a lot of them, not just drug addicts, and we've got to find a way to get them the service they need, and that may include inpatient services. But we have 241 beds right now. We're working actively with the state and the private sector to find more beds, and it's got to be done, and just a good question, in my backyard, it's got to be done on a fair and equitable basis.
So where are these beds right now?
They're at the Hacienda, there was a new one on Whitesbridge, or across, we got them spread around the city, and that's where we want to have it done. We don't want to have one massive encampment in one area.
But I guess my question is there going to be restrictions for these people? Are they going to have to meet certain things? Are they going to have to be clean and sober? Are they not going to have to, are they going to not be able to bring their dogs? Or what is the restrictions on them being able to use these?
Most of the facilities are low barrier, which means you can have alcohol, you have a partner, you can have a dog, and eventually they'll graduate up to a transitional housing with more restrictions. But I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, most are low barrier.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's certainly the state's foundational philosophy and the one that we're advancing as well for state resources.
Governor, Gavin,
I'm sorry?
why are we in this facility today, and what is mental health?
Come on, here's the czar of the facility. Tell us more about you, what you're doing.
The governor toured our crisis stabilization center here in Fresno, and this is the place where individuals go when they're in a mental health crisis. Sometimes in Fresno County they go to emergency departments, but this is the place they come if they have a primary psychiatric need. We do see a large number of individuals who are homeless or at risk of homeless here, and it's really sometimes our first opportunity or another opportunity for us to engage them in services. The question was raised about engagement. We do find that often it takes more than one time to engage someone. We don't try once and give up. And a lot of times when we have newer assets like our shelters, the people who are currently on the street may not understand that there are no barriers to those shelters. And so as we get additional funds and we're able to create a whole continuum of housing services for people, it creates capacity in those so that we can, when we do our outreach, get to those individuals and help them understand that there is a safe place for them to go. As was mentioned previously, if you're told you have one night and a one-way ticket, you might say no the next time, even when it's a better opportunity. So that's on us. We also hope in Fresno County to create some street outreach medical services, and we're going to be using some whole person care pilot funding for that. And we really think that it will be another opportunity to help people stabilize some of their medical and psychiatric problems in a street setting. You heard go where they're at and meet them where they're at, and we think that that will be another opportunity. So there's a number of resources and funding that's coming our way. We're really working hard, as the mayor said, to work together as city and county and within the county departments to bring all of our resources to bear. We're working with our community partners, including federally qualified health clinics and the hospitals, to meet people where they're at and provide them with the services they need and engage them over time so that they're able to accept the services that are available to them.
Ma'am, can you please just introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Dewan Utek. I am the Director of Behavioral Health for Fresno County.
Spell your name, please.
Dawan is my first name, and Utecht is my last name.
Governor, navigation centers, one just opened in San Diego. That one's a one-stop navigation center and offers a range of services. Do you think that's something that could work here in Fresno?
Yeah. I'm a little biased. San Francisco, we did a number of navigation center. And navigation center, for those wondering what the heck we're talking about, is a more robust service-oriented shelter. Rather than just having a shelter with cots and mats and maybe one caseworker that's just signing people in and signing people out, checking IDs, this provides more of a facilitation and a triage of people's needs and directs services and tries to aggregate services at the city and county and state level. So those are, again, are important interim steps to invest in those temporary solutions. But we have to be careful of the right balance of making sure we don't put too many resources in temporary as opposed to making the better and safer and more economically advantageous bet of those permanent supportive solutions that must be advanced. So it's a and, not an or, and navigation, I think, is a nice hybrid.
Governor, people in the Valley sometimes feel overlooked by larger cities. After your visit today, is there anything specific that you can learn from Fresno that you're going to take with you?
Well, every time I'm here, I learn something from Fresno. It's one of the most dynamic regions in the country, not just the state of California. The entrepreneurial energy in this part of the state is something that most folks probably on the coast are not familiar with, and they should get more familiar with. You're getting a lot of new venture capital investments. We were down in Bakersfield seeing. You've been leading the way for years and years. New incubators that have taken shape here. Some of the finest universities in the country are concentrated here, and I'm supporting your work on the new medical centers here and put money in the budget. And then this incredible coalition you put together. It's just, I mean, I don't know. I feel now I'm on the payroll or something because I've been too damn generous in my commentary, but this DRIVE coalition is spectacular. And it's just proof positive. There's nothing else like it in the state of California. What this community has done to organize every facet of the community, private sector, public sector, faith-based, I mean, whole thing, philanthropic, and to actually have a plan and a vision. I was really proud to put $33 million up for one recommendation, another 17 for another, about $50 million. It's a down payment, I recognize. Deeply, thank you. I think you needed like $3 billion or something. My gosh, or something like that. But the point is, it's a point of pride for me to be able to prioritize that and to encourage the entire legislature to recognize what's going on here, even those that are not representing this district. And that's my job as governor, is to get everybody, even if they're representing the big cities on the coast, to recognize that we're all in this together. The state's many parts. My father Cause taught me this at Santa Clara University. The Bible teaches us we're many parts, but one body. California, we're many parts, one body. We need to act accordingly.
Thank you, Governor.
Governor, are you going to be filling a vacancy on the state Supreme Court?
I will absolutely be filling a vacancy on the Supreme Court. I will be making that. This is very contemporary question because moments ago, maybe a few hours ago, one of the justices, the California Supreme Court, just announced that he'll be retiring. So I confess on my drive up here, I have not interviewed, nor have I dove deep into consideration of a replacement. But I will certainly do so, and I look forward to that. I didn't expect. I thought Jerry had appointed that entire court. So it's nice to be able to have a Supreme Court justice. It may make some shudder that I'll be appointing one, but I'll try to be judicious, as I have been with my recommendations in the past. By the way, I don't do this from an ideological lens. We have a very, very deliberative process, so it's also not political. And we vet people, and I've made a number of appointments for people that aren't all Democrats to the bench. It's about qualifications, but also with an eye on regionality and truly the diversity that represents the state. So I'm a son of an appellate court judge, full disclosure. I've long had a bias for the bench, but for people that transcend politics. I don't like it on either side, and so the Supreme Court, that's sacrosanct, and that will be a core value that we'll bring into the decision-making process.
Anybody from District 5 you think you may want to elevate?
Oh, there's that too. Yeah, well, there's a very parochial question, and I appreciate that. We'll consider that. Thank you. I appreciate it, everybody. Thank you. Thanks so much. Congrats on everything you're doing. Thanks again. Grateful to you. Mayor, wonderful to have you. Thanks for being here.
Anytime, man.
That's awesome.
Appreciate your support.
No, we're blessed, and blessed with everything you're doing.